The Sikha we were learning today is look the Sikha Chelik Chov Daled, the second Sikha to Parshas Devarim. And the Sikha talks about more or less the beginning of the Parsha of Devarim. There, first the Torah says where the Yidden were at that time, and the time when it was, which month when it was, and this happened after they conquered Sichon and Eig. And as the Pasuk says, they were in the Ever Yarden, but it's May of then Moshe started speaking to the Eden, telling the Torah to Eden, speaking to the Eden. And what Moshe started saying, the Pasuk starts with the words, Hashem Elokeinu diber aleinu b'cherev leimer, Hashem our God, spoke to us by Cherev. Cherev is Har Sinai. So when the Eden were staying in Har Sinai for quite a while, so the Eibishter told the Eden by Cherev, Rav lechem sheves ba'or hazeh. I'm going to translate it in the simple way, but we'll see the details later. But the simple way means Rav lechem sheves ba'or hazeh. It's enough for you staying in this mountain. And then the pasuk continues, Psnu usulachem, turn and travel and come to Har HaMeiri and go to Eretz Canaan. And then he continues, look, I gave you the land. Come and inherit this land. Hashem promised word to your forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, to give it to them, to the children. So basically, Hashem said, it's enough that you're staying at this mountain, Har Sinai. Now turn and go to Eretz Yisrael. This is the general idea. But Rashi obviously goes into the details. And this is what the Rebbe says, we'll start a Sikha inside. Noch der Akdome betchilas Pashaseinu wegen der Matze, Zman, Numokim, V'Iden, Numesham, Gefunden, B'Shas Amiras, Mishnah Torah. After the introduction, the beginning of the Parsha, where it talks about the situation, the time, the place where Yidden and Moshe Rabbeinu happened were at a time when Moshe started saying Chumash Devarim, which is Mishnah Torah, hebt on the Torah überzugeben, was Moshe had gesagt to Yidden. So the Torah starts saying, what did he say? First, the Torah gives a description of the surrounding, of when and what, and at what situation it was. Then the Torah starts saying, what did he say? So he started saying like this, as I just mentioned before, Hashem Elokeinu diber aleinu b'cherev, Hashem our God spoke to us in Har Sinai, Leib are saying, Rav lochem sheves b'hor hazeh. What does the word Rav lochem mean? So we translated before when we learned, just read the simple words, enough for you sitting in this mountain. Stellt sich Rashi Rav lochem sheves. Rashi quotes from the pasuk the words Rav lochem sheves, and he's mefarish and explains what does Rav lochem mean. Kipshut, simple shot, like we just said before. It's enough. It's enough for you sitting in this mountain. And what he was continuing, we should continue further. We should now go. The Eibishter was saying it's enough staying by Har Sinai. Let's go further. But then Rashi says V'yesh medrash agoda. There's a medrash agoda that says that the word Rav doesn't mean, as we said before, enough for you, but Rav means harbe lachem, a lot for you. Gdula v'schara l'shivaschem orazeh, a lot of greatness and reward you got for sitting in this mountain. Al yishivaschem, for sitting, sitting doesn't mean sitting, means sitting, being in this mountain. And Rashi explains, what did he say are the great things that happened when you were sitting in this mountain? Asisa Mishkan, you made the Mishkan. Menorah, you made the Menorah, which was in the Mishkan. You made Kalim, for the Mishkan, you made different vessels. Kibaltem Torah, you received the Torah. Manisam lochem Sanhedrin, you appointed for yourself Sanhedrin, which means judges. And he gives a part of the judges, Sore Alof, Sore Meis. We find that there were Sore means judges for thousands and judges for hundreds, different groups of different judges for different groups. This is the second pshat that Rashi brings from Medrash Agoda. Darfim Pashtain, so the Rebbe says we have to understand. Rashi bepirush ala Torah kumtach mafaras and pshuta shel nikra. Rashi in his commentary on the Torah comes to explain simple pshat in the psukim. Hein favos bagenugend sich nicht mit dem Pirush gepshutei. So why is Rashi not? Why is it not enough for Rashi to stay with the simple pshat? Like Rashi says, they can kipshutei. Simple meaning of the words, as Rav lechem, main tai lechem. The Rav lechem means it's enough for you. Why does he also bring a second pshat, which is not pshuta shel mikra? Rashi himself refers to it as it's a medrash. Why is it not enough, the simple pshat? Now, Meforshim learn, and the Rebbe says some Meforshim, which is the Six Chachomim, learn as late Nersh and Pinish Shver. Usually when Rashi says two pshatim on the same inyan, it's because each one of them has something that's not clearly understood. The first pshat has a problem, and that's why Rashi gives another pshat. The second pshat has a different problem, Rashi, that's why he still sticks to the first pshat. The first pshat is always closer to the pshat, and therefore Rashi writes that first. But there's for sure when Rashi gives the second pshat is because the first pshat is not clear, there's something not understood. And the question that I've asked, what's not understood in the first pshat? So some of Farshim say Rashi has a problem with the first pshat. That if it means enough for you, Rav Lechem means it's enough for you, it should have said that. It should have said clearly, Dai Lechem. Nita, Rav Lechem, not a lot for you. The word Rav actually literally means a lot. The Teichem means a lot for you, means it's enough for you, but you could have said clearly enough. Oh, but the Churi does not kosher. The Rebbe says that's not really a problem. Doesn't seem to be a problem that it should say Rav Lechem instead of Dai Lechem. But in Frier in Pirush Rashi, we find earlier in Rashi, and the Rebbe has the cloud, whenever there's something early in Rashi, Rashi expects that the Talmud who learns this posuk remembers what he wrote before. So therefore here we would remember what Rashi wrote before. Rashi read the Taichas earlier, and that in Parshas Va'era, as a Taich the Rav, die. Rashi over there says, the posuk says there like this. The posuk is in Parsha Va'era where it speaks about the Makkah of Borod, of the hail. So Pari said that Rav miyes kelis likim. He asked Moshe Rabbeinu to daven today to stop the Borod, the Makkah of hail. And he said, the Rav from being hearing these noises from Hashem. So what does Rashi say? What's V'rav mean? V'rav means it's enough of what we heard till now, what we had till now. So Rashi over there teaches the word Rav means enough. Und bringt it in zweiten Pirush and doesn't bring a second shot. The fact that Rashi doesn't bring a second shot means for Rashi is sufficient, the first shot. Because Rashi learns that the word Rav could mean Dai Lochem, enough for you, and you don't need another shot. So why would we say here that the reason Rashi says that after he says the simple pshat means it's enough for you, kipshute, Rashi has another pshat, because if it would really mean that, it should have said Dai Lechem. And we see over there that Rashi learns that Rav means die enough, and he doesn't bring a second pshat. So we're back to the question, what is wrong with the first pshat that Rashi needs a second pshat? Second question, in the zweiten Pirush, in the second pshat, as Rav is from Loshen Riboy, that the word Rav means a lot, harba lochem, like Rashi says, a lot of great things and a lot of reward you got there. A lot of greatness that the Yidden received in this mountain. That's the second pshat. Is also is nicht verstanden, not understood. And as you see now, the Rebbe is going to ask two kashas on the second pshat, but here the Rebbe numbers it with numbers. Before he said Aleph Beis, and here he numbers it, because these two kashas are two details in one kasha. Really, the second kasha is that there are questions on the second pshat. And now in that, what are the kashas? The Rebbe has number one and number two. Number one, what's the hardship in the second pshat? Why does Rashi mention, when he says the great things that the Yidden accomplished while they were at Har Sinai? So Rashi mentions from Agodah, what obviously it says in this Agadah, in this Medrash, that what was it? So he says, Rashi says, you made the Mishkan, the Menorah, the Kelim, you received the Torah, and you made Sanhedrin. The Shitos, the Pshuta Shlomikra, the Gedah bringen the Gdula, was hat sich aufgetan b'Harazeh, wachas mefurish Pshuta Shlomikra. Why does Rashi bring the great accomplishments that happened at Har Sinai? The things that we just mentioned, obviously that says in the Medrash, where Rashi, who explains Pshuta Shlomikra, should have brought something else, something that the Torah clearly uses the word Gedula, calls it something great, something big. The Posik says, in Vaschana later on, Haniya Kadovor Hagodel Hazeh, you see these words are in italics, are underlined basically. Was there anything, any great thing like this? A Hanishma Kameyu? Or was anything heard like this, so great as this? What was the greatness? Hashoma Am Kela Lakim Bedaber B'Teichesh. Did any nation hear the voice of Hashem talking from fire? That's something that the Torah refers to as great. So that's what Rashi should have said, because Rashi follows Pshuta Shemikra. So if you're bringing the greatness, why don't you use the greatness that the Torah refers to as great? Now Rashi demont nor Kabbalah Satayra, Kibaltam Torah. Rashi does mention that one of the great things is that you receive the Torah. But that's something else. Receive the Torah, I mean you got the laws, you got the Torah. But it doesn't mention the fact that you heard Hashem's voice by Matan Torah. But the Posek Gufa Ruft is Dover Agodl, the Posek itself calls it a great thing, a big thing. That you hear the voice of Hashem talking from the fire. Rashi doesn't mention it. He just mentioned that we received the Torah. Why doesn't he mention that? That's one question in what Rashi brings, the details of Rashi brings of what he accomplished by Har Sinai. Second question is, in the Yonavas Rashi Rechend, those things, so there are two things. One, why didn't he mention something else, which would be more Shutashal Mikra being called something big, something great? On the other hand, the thing that the Rashi does mention is not such a great thing. So why didn't he mention the real great thing? On the other hand, what he does mention is not so great. Why is it? In the Yonavas Rashi Rechend is nicht auf sehr viel Nikel de Gdula, was in the Schadish geworden Baharazeh. In those things he mentioned, you don't see something great, something special, that's something new that happened when they were standing by the Har Sinai, by this mountain. Kibaltem Torah mitzvahs is nicht in ganzen over Chodesh. The thing that he mentions, you received the Torah, that's not receiving Torah. Torah is lessons. Torah is telling you what to do, how to behave. To get laws and rules, how to behave, is not something completely new. Avram, and Avram, etc., Torah. They received Torah. They didn't receive Torah, but they got instructions how to behave. All the Goyim, all the Bnei Neach were told already, given instructions, 7 mitzvahs. This is given Yeshiva Shem Ve'ever, you had the Yeshiva of Shem Ve'ever, as Rashi brings in different places, that they learned Torah, so they had a Torah. Und bei Jeden haben Torah Mitzvahs sich angegeben von the Ovis, and by Jeden themselves, Torah Mitzvahs started from the Ovis. Brings a Rashi and tell this. Also, the concept that he says that you appointed Sanhedrin, you appointed judges, was there before. I feel about Goyim. Even Goyim had judges. As we clearly understand, and the Rebbe in Ha'or 11 brings from Rashi quotes Shaftim, and in another place that they made him a Shafet, so that we do know they had Shaftim. Certainly by Eden, before Har Sinai, they had Shaftim. And the Rebbe in Ha'or 12 asks, even though it seems like when they appointed the judges, came because Yisrael gave the advice, and that happened by Har Sinai already. So the Rebbe says in the Ha'or, there, not that it was a new thing to have judges. The Chiddush was that Moshe Rabbeinu himself started judging. That's what Yisrael told him. That's not going to work. You have to have different judges. But the fact that they had judges, they had before there also. So the concept of judges is not such a special thing. So why does Rashi mention these things, something great and special that happened by Har Sinai, these things which are not so special, things that were there from before also? So we have a double kasha. Number one, there's one great thing that the Torah refers to as great, and that's listening to Hashem speaking from Teicho Eish. Rashi doesn't mention. And what Rashi does mention is something that is not really that special. And the truth is, even though the Medrash says these things, obviously, because he quotes it from the Medrash, but Rashi is not limited to what the Medrash says. Rashi follows Pshuto Shemikr. Pshuto Shemikr, these are not such special things. Noch Diukim dem Zweiten Pirish. Other Diukim, basically, certain comments, certain things that we see in the second pshat. Number one, the Seder Rashi Rechem Din Yonim, the order that Rashi mentioned, the special things that happened by Har Sinai is the Mishkan, Torah, and Sanhedrin. Stimmt nicht mit dem Seder Azmanim ist seinen geworden. It doesn't fit, the order doesn't fit to the order of time, the way it happened. Meaning Sanhedrin, then, first, like, so he says like this, Frier is given Kabbalah Satira. First there was receiving the Torah by Har Sinai. Then came in Sanhedrin, then establishing Sanhedrin. Then came the Mishkan. And there, when the order talks about it, the details, where we see that this is the order. So the real order was Torah, Sanhedrin, and Mishkan. And that's not what Rashi says. The Rosh of Rashi is first Mishkan, Torah, then Sanhedrin. Second question, Rashi zok Mishkan, Menorah, Kelim. When he mentions the Mishkan, he mentions the Mishkan. And in the Mishkan, we got the Menorah and Kelim, and the other vessels. The Rashi specifically mentions separately Menorah and then the Kelim. Menorah is part of the Kelim. Und nicht Mishkan v'Kelov stam, was is Kelev? The Menorah, Rashi should have said Mishkan v'Kelov, which would include all the Kelim, including the Menorah. Why does he mention Menorah separately? And the third question, Rashi touched up Sanhedrin, Sorei Alof and Sorei Meis. When he says you got Sanhedrin, he said you got the Sorei Alof and Sorei Meis, means the officers, the judges of thousands. Every 1,000 group had a judge, and hundreds. when he's mashmid the Sorah Chamishim and Sorah Asoris, and he skips. If you look back when they established these judges, it says you establish Sorah Chamishim. There was a judge for every 50, and Sorah Asoris of every 10, and then there was a judge over every 1,000, and a judge every hundreds. So here Rasha mentions out of the four, he mentions just Sorah Alofim, Sorah Meyes, the one over thousands and over hundreds, and doesn't mention Sorah Chamishim and Sorah Asoris. Now the Rebbe says, the kashas, these three questions that we just asked, then noch starker, become stronger, b'shas mezetas in Sifri, but is l'chure demoke for Rasha's Pirush. When you look in the Sifri, which seemingly is the source of where Rasha gets his comment, Shtein takasiyas amishkon, noch shtei takasiyas amishkon. So there in the Moker of Rasha, the source which seemingly Rasha took it from, it says, the Mishkan says, after Kabbalah Satayr receiving the Teres Sanhedrin. That's one thing. So one kasha we has the order in Rasha seems to be not according to the order of time. In the Sifri, which is the source of Rasha, it says it in the right order. It says Kabbalah Satayr, and meaning Sanhedrin, and then Asisa Mishkan, which is the right order, which is not like Rasha. So besides the fact that Kasha is on Rasha itself, why does he say it not according to the order? Why does he change it from the Sifri? The second Kasha, Eshteit Mishkan V'kei, the second Kasha was, why does Rasha mention the Meir separately? Why is it not included in the Kelim? In Sifri Tak, it's like that. The Eshteit Mishkan V'kelim, es wird nicht geteilt the Meir. It says Mishkan V'kelim, and the Meir is not mentioned separately. And as bringt sich Sorah Chamishim V'Sorah Asoris, the third Kasha, which is, why does it only bring Soreh Alofim, Soreh Meis, not Soreh Chamishim, Soreh Asoris? In the Sifri, it says that too. When Rasha is Mishane, and Rasha changes. See, when Rasha, the Kasha and Rasha itself will be a Kasha on its own. Certainly, the Kasha is when you see that he changed from the way it's written in Sifri. Und in drei Protim, in dem zweiten Teil allein von seinem Pirush. And these are three details, all three details in the second Pirush itself that Rasha changed from the Sifri, from Mokeh Perusha, which is the source of his Pirush. Why did Rasha do that? Now, when we're going to go back to the first shot of Rasha, we see that there are changes there. The Gabe in Rasha, the way it's in the source, which is the Sifri. In Sifri state, the first part, not the first shot, I'm sorry, the first part of the second shot. Rasha writes that what happened, that Rav Lechem means, Harbe Lechem Deilo Eschar Ali Shepleschem Harazeh. First shot is Rav Lechem means that's enough, you stayed enough here. Second shot, Rav means Harbe, a lot of greatness and schar for sitting in this mountain. Now in Sifri it says Blei Schar Lechem, just says the word schar, reward. What Rasha is Meisiv Nochayin, Gdoilo Schar. Rasha had something else. Greatness, you got greatness and schar. Now Rasha also adds the word Harbe a lot. So Rasha, the Rebbe in the Orah 20 says that's not a problem, because Rasha is trying to explain the word Rav, so he has to add the word Harbe, because Rav means a lot, so he says Harbe Gedul, he got a lot of Gedul. So Rasha, which is trying to fit to the Pasuk, adds these words. But the other thing, why does Rasha add the word Gedolo or Gedula when in Sifri it only says Schar? Another thing, in Sifri is the Loshen Scharu Lechem Yishivaschem Borazeh. It's a reward for you just sitting in the mountain, which means, what's the reward for? For being in the mountain, staying in the mountain. The yeshiva gufi is the schar. It means you got schar that you stayed in the mountain. The being in the mountain, staying in the mountain is the schar. You got a lot of greatness and reward for staying in the mountain. The reward is a result of being in the mountain. That because you stayed in the mountain, that's why you got greatness. But the Medrash doesn't say that. The Sifri doesn't say that. The Sifri says you got schar that you stay in this mountain. The staying in the mountain itself is schar. And Rasha changes. Why does Rasha change it? The third question is, the Loshna Sifri is Manisi Aleichem. In Sifri it says that I appointed on you the Sanhedrin. The Reibishter Mamanigin. I means the Reibishter. The Reibishter appointed the Sanhedrin. When Rasha Zok Nisam Lachem, Rasha says you appointed for yourself. And the Yidna Mamanigin, the Yidna appointed. Why does Rasha change that? That he didn't appoint it. The Bir B'chol Zeh, the explanation is like this. So the Rebbe says like this, going back to the first pshat. Rav Lechem B'Pashas meant, We said before, the simple pshat of the words Rav Lechem. Rav Lechem in simple pshat means, as I says, nicht nor die Lechem, es ist eich genug, nor mehr davon. Rav Lechem, es ist zu viel für euch, mehr wie genug. Rav Lechem doesn't mean enough for you. It means more than enough. It's more. It means it's mehr für wie genug, more than enough. So that's what the Rebbe says here. The pashtas, it means not just die Lechem, it's enough, but more than that. It's Rav. That's why it says Rav Lechem means it's more than enough. Die Lechem means it's enough. The word Rav means a lot. A lot means it's over, it's more. It's more than enough. And in Orah 23, the Rebbe says, Hakim Parsha Ve'era, where it talks about the border that we said before. And Parei said, Rav miyes kelas elikim. Rasha says, Dailoi, it's enough. So Rasha doesn't say it's more than enough. So the Rebbe says very simple, because over there was talking about the punishment, about the borot. Being punished, any punishment that you get is more than enough. So when he says it's enough punishment, means it's pretty too much. By punishment, you could say that. But not when we're talking about good things. There could be enough. It's enough. Okay, time is up. It's enough. Or you can say it's more than enough. But really, Rav Lechem means more than enough. And even over there, it means more than enough. But he does Rashi said Dai Lechem because whatever it is more than enough. Being enough is more than enough. But here, it means more than enough. The Rashi is Mefarek and Posik. Like Rashi explains the Posik in Keirach, Vayemru Aleim, Rav Lechem Moshe Rabbeinu said to the people who were fighting with him, concerning the complaint of Keirach and his people to Moshe and Aaron, Moshe said, Rav Lechem, what did Rashi say? Not it's enough. You took more than enough. In other words, why are you complaining about us? You yourself got more than enough greatness or positions, etc., etc. So Rashi says clearly that Rav Lechem means more than enough. And it fits like the word Rav. Rav means a lot. A lot doesn't mean enough. It means very over, a lot. Und das ist bei Rashi schwer in unser Posik for Rav Lechem Shebes Borazeh. And that's what Rashi's hardship is concerning this Posik. When the Posik says, the Eibush said by Sinai, Rav Lechem Shebes Borazeh, it's Rav Lechem to sit in this mountain, which means Harbe Yesem Edai, der Eirech as Mount von Yishvaskam Borazeh, that it's more than enough sitting too much time, too long of a time, sitting and staying in this mountain. So the question is, how can you say that? How can you say that staying by Har Sinai is too much? Too much? Since staying at the mountain, they received more of Torah mitzvahs, chul, etc. So you had to stay there. And it brought a great profit, a great gain. They gained a lot by staying more. But so it's and as long as they stayed by Har Sinai, it reminded them, Matan Torah, standing by the mountain that they received the Torah, isn't that something good? Besides the the mountain is called in different places Har Elikim, the godly mountain. So staying there is always a gain. You can't say it's too much to be there. Would be enough if we would say enough. I could say more than enough. You could say it's enough. You gained what you had to gain, and there's other things that you got to do. But to say that it's too much, more than enough means too much of having all these great things that you can't say that. So therefore, Rashi explains it. So that's the first problem. So the first shot is kipshute. That posher, that means that's enough for you, but it doesn't mean enough. It means more than enough. But Rashi has a problem with this. That's like a simple shot in the words, but it can't really simply mean more than enough, because why would it be too much staying by Har Sinai? So Rashi Bavonis, it answers it. Nevertheless, Rashi says that this kipshute is the first pshat. There is a shverikite there, but this is still the first pshat. Like them teichen von hemshech in doyin posik is given Rav Harbe Yesem Medaylachem Sheves Bahar, because the Rebbe says I will explain that yes, what the Torah here, the psukim here are trying to tell us, it fits to say that staying by Har Sinai is too much. So the Rebbe explains that the word, the first pshat kipshute makes sense, and Rashi learns like that, even though it seems like it's hard to understand why is it too much. So the Rebbe will explain why in this case over here it meant too much, because as we'll see, there was something else they had to do. So staying here longer is no good. It's too much staying, because you'll miss out on what you're supposed to gain by leaving. And the Rebbe explained. This really understood by first explaining a general diuk. But the ganze Linie von der ersten drei Psukim, was Moshe hat gesagt zu Eden, that the whole union of the three first psukim that Moshe told the Eden, as it says, given a dibur miyuchat for the Meibish, that Hashem specifically said to leave. That's what he says. Hashem Elokeinu diber, Hashem our God spoke, and he said, Rav Lochem, it's enough that you're staying here. Pnu, so turn and go. And then he continues, go to Eretz Yisrael. Hashem gave you the land, promised to your fathers and all your children later. So what the pasuk is really saying, that Hashem is saying, that Moshe is saying, that Hashem specifically said, leave, because you have to turn the other way, and you have to go to Eretz Yisrael, which he promised. Now this inyan, wird in ganzen Niedermont to Chumash Bamidbar. This concept that Hashem said, turn and go to Eretz Yisrael, is not written in Chumash Bamidbar. The main place where it talks about Eden traveling away from Har Sinai is in Chumash Bamidbar. Doesn't say that Hashem specifically said go. Their posik zog dort nor. The posik only says there, it was the second year, second month, 20th, which means Chov year. The honor, the cloud left the Mishkan, and they even left from Har Sinai. So the Torah says they left. That says there, but doesn't make a whole fuss over it. Saying that the Eibishter said that you have to leave. Why does it not say there and it does say it here? Here it says clearly that the Eibishter said that Tamder from this movement. So the reason is understood. Dort Moshe gewollt Teil sein von Eden dem Halach Yonim. Here Moshe tried to describe to the Eden the whole way the things went. Starting from how it was by Matan Torah, that's what he tells them. Bis the Matze, bis seine gestanden nichts, till the situation they were now, which is 40 years later, Kemat, standing by Ever Hayard on the other side of the Yard. What did he try to bring out? Bringing out as be'etzem am Eden gedacht reinkommen in Israel bald noch sein beim Berg Sinai. Really, they should have entered Israel right after Har Sinai. They were by Har Sinai. Moshe is telling him, but only because of the sin of the spies of the Meraglim, they stayed in the middle for such a long time. So he's trying to tell him, really, right after Har Sinai, you should have gone to Eretz Yisrael. That's what you have to say, that already then, when Eden was still by Chere, which is Har Sinai, that's why he says here, the Eibishter said, Pnu, so turn, Rav Lochem, Shevas Bar Azeh, it's enough staying here, turn and go to Eretz Yisrael. Why was he saying that? He wants to show how the Eibishter was ready to take them. So the Eibishter said, over there, in Bamidbar, it's not important that the Eibishter, obviously we understand that it didn't happen by itself. The Eibishter, the honor left because the Eibishter Api Hashem, so the Eibishter wanted him to leave. It doesn't make a fuss of saying go. Here is making a fuss over it. The Eibishter said go because it shows something. The Eibishter wanted us to go straight to Eretz Yisrael. But he says moving with the posik zok Rav Lochem Shevas Bar Azeh. Now we understand why it says Rav Lochem, which we said doesn't just mean it's enough. It means it's more than enough. Why? To show, to stress how strong was the will of Hashem on the Eden, that Hashem was rushing them to go straight to Eretz Yisrael. Like Rasha says in the beginning of the parashat this week, he says, he's trying, that Moshe Rabbeinu is trying to say that Hashem, the way that he describes, was troubled himself so much to hasten your entering Eretz Yisrael. So what he's trying to bring out is how much the Eibishter had wanted really to take him right away to Eretz Yisrael. These, so much so, as niet cooking of the grace and milas was the brings the yeshiva Har Sinai, that in spite of the great things that happened by staying at Har Sinai, that jeder versammeln sich dort, nevertheless, as long as they stayed there, the more they stay there, they're not going to Israel, it's too much. So the question was, why would he say staying by Har Sinai is too much? It's great things. He says, true, but you're missing out something. It's too much because you have to go straight there to Israel. And that's why it makes kipshute. Kipshute means, first shot in Rasha, kipshute. Rav Lochem means, yes, it's too much to stay. And Etaka means too much because looking at the whole Hemshech of the parasha, David is saying, go to Eretz Yisrael, and Moshe makes the stress of going to Eretz Yisrael. That's what David said, it's too much. The Pirish is aber nicht glattig, but still this pshat is not 100%, not so smooth. That's what Rashi has a second pshat. But from Loshen Rav Lachem Sheves, Yesem Badai is mashme, from the way the Pasuk says, because the way we said the pshat now, it's not that it's too much staying here. It's too much not going further, because really you should go to that store. Staying here is not bad. But the Loshen is Rav Lachem Sheves, Yesem Badai, that means too much, is mashma, the yeshiva bahadet nit fieros. That staying here is not good. Not that you're missing out and continuing to travel to Eretz Yisrael. Mashma that this itself is a problem. How could you say staying there is too much? They stay there that long because that's what they want. Like all the stops that they made and the traveling they did was according to the Tzivu, the commandment of Hashem. As long as the cloud didn't go up, go away, leave the Mishkan. The Rebbe should say, "Nit geheißen wegehen von dort." And Hashem did, as long as Hashem did not tell him to leave, Hashem. So by staying in the mountain was according to the commandment of Hashem. You were doing what Hashem wanted. How could he say it's more than enough? Now, it's not such a terrible kasha, because what he meant to say, it's enough. It's too much staying here, too much. You'll lose out because you're not going to be going to Eretz Yisrael right away, which David wants you to do. But still, the Loshen, the way it's written, is mashman that the too much is staying, and staying is not too much. Staying, the being there is a great thing. So therefore, the Rafar bringt Rashi zweiten Pirish from Medrash Haggadah. Rashi brings the second Pirish from Medrash Haggadah as Rav Lochem meant when it says Rav Lochem Shevas Borazeh means nit kipshute mer beginu. Doesn't mean simple pshat, more than enough. Nor harbe lochem gdula v'schar. A lot of hirbe lochem gdula v'schar, that you got a lot. Rav Lochem, you got a lot of greatness and a lot of reward. Rav from Loshen Ribu. So according to this, Rav Lochem means from the word Ribu, a lot. But says feel Gdula Schar. You got a lot of greatness and a lot of schar staying there. Okay, they some Asber sein, I say, like them Pirish is them Chuven von them Sorgen Ziedens Rav Lochem Shevas Vahor. Now Rashi wants to explain that even according to this pshat, the reason why the Eibusha said Rav Lochem is in order to hasten your coming to Eretz Yisrael. Was der Fahrer wegen der Amiras HaKadosh Baruch Hu Tzila Pasha Seinet Afke. The Rebbe Kanal, like the Rebbe said before, that why is the Torah say here that the Eibusha told him to leave? To show how much the Eibusha want to take him to Eretz Yisrael. That has to fit to the second pshat also. According to the first pshat, we know Rav Lochem, it's enough staying here, meaning the Eibusha wants you to go further. Now we have an upshat. He told me you gained a lot by there. We have to find a way to explain that. Even that is a reason why Hashem is telling him to go to Eretz. It's like a part of telling him to go to Eretz Yisrael. According to the first shot, it's obvious. It's too much to say here because if you stay here, you're not going, and you have to go. Go to Eretz Yisrael. According to the second shot, means just telling him what greatness you got by Har Sinai. How does that fit to that the Eibush is trying to tell him that I want you to go to Eretz Yisrael? The Eibush is trying to rush them to go to Eretz Yisrael. What does that got to do with the greatness they got? So the Rebbe says, is Rashi nit maiting in Loshen Sifri. Therefore, Rashi doesn't copy the way the Loshen, the words of the Sifri, nor the Medrash Haggadah, what the Loshen is, but he quotes a Medrash Haggadah, where the Loshen is that what did you gain by staying by Sinai? Asisa Mishkan, you made the Mishkan, Meneira, and the Kalim. Kibaltim Teira, you received the Teira, Manisa Lechem Sanhedrin, you made Sanhedrin. So Rashi, the question was, why does Rashi pick this order? Why does Rashi pick these examples? And why did Rashi pick the Meneira separately? So now we'll understand that Dafke, the way Rashi writes it, but Dafke Dizach, and in them say there are only these things that Rashi mentions. And in this order, beweisen the greatkeit von Eden zu gehen to Eretz Yisrael. This shows part of the Eden being ready to go to Eretz Yisrael, like he will explain soon. And B'meila fits to the Eibush told him, you're ready to go to Eretz Yisrael. And that's why he said, Rav Lochem, why is it? Because according to the second pshat, because you gained so much by Har Sinai that now you are ready to go to Yisrael. What did they do by Har Sinai that made them ready to go to Yisrael? Now the Rebbe will explain it. It's Dafka, these three things, and this order that Rashi says. Before the Eden went into their own land, into a settled land, but they say that the way of life in this kind of land where you're settled, like all nations settle in a land, could lead to forget, the Yidden should forget that they're different than all the nations. So they first had to strengthen. Before they went to Eretz Yisrael, they had to strengthen in themselves that they are, like the Matan Torah, David just said, you are a Mamlechas Kehanim, a nation of Kehanim, and Gei Kodesh, a holy nation. A holy nation means you are separated from regular people. Those of us a nikva werden nazaif, and that should be established within them, set within them in such a way as that even later when they are in a regular settled land, so they zaina Gei Kodesh. They should be a holy nation. It should be a precious nation more than all the other nations. So in order to be able to go to Eretz Yisrael, be ready to go to Eretz Yisrael, you have to make sure that they're ready for it. Ready for it means not the Gashmias, that's one thing, but ready Beruchnias, that they are so much absorbed of this holiness that this will stay with them even when they go into Eretz Neshevet, which is a regular land. The Farid given the Yeshiva Har Sinai. Therefore, what happened when they stayed by Har Sinai was that that accomplished that they became a holy nation completely, that this will stay with them later. And this is generally in three things. And those are the three things that Rashi brings. In the Kudi Ikris for the Gei Kodesh is the main point of being a holy nation is the Lashon HaKosav, like the Apostle says, Kadeshim Tiyu Ki Kodesh Oni. You shall be holy because I am holy. You must be a holy nation because I am holy. Where do you see that? Is V'shechanti b'seichel. That is the fact that the Eibishter rests among Yidden. So the Eibishter is holy. So we, who the Eibishter rests within us, amongst us, also have to be holy. And that is Asisa Mishkan. That's what means you made the Mishkan. I says, that there's a set place where the Kedusha of Hashem is there. And that, b'meila, you are able to have that Kedusha too, wherever you go. So the first thing he said, you're ready to go to Eretz Yisrael because you have a Mishkan. As is need genug, the Gilui Lakus is given Matan Torah. So the question was, why didn't he bring the fact that they didn't heard something great? They heard the voice of Hashem from the fire. That wouldn't be enough. The Gilui Lakus that happened in Matan Torah, the voice of Hashem that spoke from the fire, that's not enough. Valdos is given Lefi. That's something was temporary. It's not V'shachanti means arrested. It's settled. That's not enough. Since we're talking here about stressing the idea that there is such a resting of Shechina, that should be so much that it'll have an effect on them even when they come to Eretz Yisrael in a regular, normal, settled land. The Rebbe Teil Rasha is therefore Rasha separates and writes separately Menera from Nalaklei Mishkan. First, we explain why the first thing Rasha brings to the Mishkan. That's the general idea. Then in the Mishkan, he mentions separately Menera. Why the Menera? Because Menera is different. But Menera, Rasha already explained earlier concerning the Menera. The Menera was the testimony for all the people of the world that the Shechina rests among Yidden. So when he wants to mention that you got so much so of the Shechina, that's the holiness in you, that it lasts forever, it lasts for later on also. So he says first the general idea of the Mishkan, but in the Mishkan Kufa he mentioned the Menera, because the Menera is the one thing that was the testimony that the Shechina is amongst Yidden, and that's what we're looking for, that the Shechina is amongst Yidden, Mela, the Yidden have to be a Gei Kodesh. And it's interesting, in Order 41, the Rebbe says, so why does Rasha mention Kalim? So he should have just the Menera. Because Kalim do make the Mishkan, because without Kalim, the Mishkan is not perfect. So you have to mention Kalim. But he wants to stress the idea that the Shechina is there is something set way that it's obvious. So Rasha mentions the union of the Menera. And this all came from being by Har Sinai. And in Order 40, the Rebbe says an interesting thing, that when it comes to making the Mishkan, it goes back on the Mishkan itself. It says that you should make it like Asher Hareisa Bahor, like it was showed in the mountain. Rasha wants to show that the Mishkan is connected to Har Sinai. So you showed in the mountain that's part of Har Sinai made the Mishkan. So that shows the specialty that they gained by being by Har Sinai, that they got the Mishkan where the Shechina rests. And then he mentions also the Menera because that's more specific within the Mishkan itself. And Ochkum Kabbalat Teira, then Rasha says, you receive the Teira, the Uzgetilkeit from Gei Kodesh, that the fact that the Yidden are a Gei Kodesh, different than everybody else, because of the Ashras Hashchina, that's so strong that it makes a difference in the daily life of every Yid. Then was by receiving the Torah. So Rasha mentions the receiving Torah. That's a third part. First is the general union of the Mishkan that the Shekhinah is there, so you have to be holy. Even later, it gives you holiness for later. The Menorah is there. And then the fact that you, because of that, live a daily life of Torah, that's gebalte mit Torah. Und die Eden sollen wissen und verstehen genau bei seinen Deros Torah, and Eden should understand what are the lessons of Torah. What is the Torah trying to tell us? That was on the dritte Inyan. You have to have the third thing, Minyan Sanhedrin, establishing, appointing Sanhedrin, judges. Because they learn in Eden the Dinim in Yonah Torah, they teach the Eden the Dinim and the Yonim of Torah, und weisen, wie sie sollen ausführen die Deros Torah befehlt, and show how we have to actually do what the Torah says befehlt. So that's what Rasha says. So Rasha gives, let's look back at Rasha. Rasha says, what happened? You made the Mishkan. You said a lot of great things you got. And the Rebbe says, great things that prepared you to leave here and go to Eretz Yisrael. You made the Mishkan, that's the first thing. You have a Menorah, you had Kalim, and you received the Torah, and you made Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin are the ones that teach you what the Torah tells us. That shows that you're going to live, you have the power to live a daily life according to the way the Eibishter wants. That's why Rashi brings only the judges over thousands and over hundreds. Not like in Sifri, which takes it from the Pasuk. Also officers, judges of 50 and 10. That was the question. Sifri brings it. Why doesn't Rashi bring it? So the Rebbe says, well, the reason is like this. This that they also had judges over 50 and over 10s is not given if Meshach's mom didn't given derech in Midbar. It's only during the time when they were on the trip, journey of Midbar, in the desert. While they were traveling in the Midbar. With all the troubles of the way. So there you need judges, even over smaller groups. We're talking now as their preparation to Eretz Yisrael. When they went to Eretz Yisrael, in a settled place, in a set place, so you don't need any more over every 50. Certainly not over every 10. And since we're talking about this as a preparation to later Eretz Yisrael, Rasha doesn't mention it. And the Rebbe, in Order 44, says that even in the Midbar, when they went to war, it also only mentions Sorei Alofim and Sorei Meis, because it's not concerning teaching them the Torah. Teaching the Torah, they had to have, because it was in the Midbar, they had to have more. Certainly, when you enter Eretz Yisrael and they're settled, now it's enough if you have the other ones, Sorei Meis and Sorei Alofim. Und wie bald das Rashi rechnet nur den Yonim the Mufka to the Greatkeit Leben Eretz Yisrael, and since Rashi is only bringing those things that you must have in order to be ready to live in Eretz Yisrael, like in Eretz Yisrael, in a settled place, like a holy nation, they wanted no Sorei Meis, only the Sorei Meis from thousands and hundreds, because that was what's going to be in Eretz Yisrael, which will help them be a Gay Kodesh. Now the Rebbe says, but nicht verstehen dem Tam von die andere drei Shenis and Pirashasha gab Loshn und Zefri. This will also explain the reason why of the other changes of the Lashenis in Rasha versus the Loshn and Zefri, the Leil Siv Gimel, like I said in the question that the Rebbe asked earlier. As we said, Rasha is trying to tell us that the pshat in the posek Rav Lechem is to hint us not stam schar that Yidden got. You gained a lot of schar being in by Har Sinai. That dos was the yeshiva b'Har Hatuv getan, as Yidden sollen werden buchen zu der Knesset Eretz Yisrael. But he's trying to tell them there are certain things that happened by Har Sinai that had an effect on you that you should now be ready to go to Eretz Yisrael. The far by gedugen sich nit Rasha mit Loshen schar. That's why Rasha is not satisfied with the word schar. See, one of the questions was that the Sifri says the word you got schar. Rasha said gedula is schar. Why not the word schar itself? Because schar itself is not enough. Gedula that you gave her greatness. The main thing is the greatness the Yidden reached. Schar is a reward to get. Gedula is a level in a person. You're great. What he's trying to say, you became great. You became in a higher level that now you're able to enter Eretz Yisrael and live like a gay Kodesh. So schar would not be enough. Schar is a good thing. See, according to Sifri, he's trying to tell us what you got a lot of great things by Har Sinai. He's not saying got a lot of great things. The Rebbe learned Shatner Rasha that he's telling us you got a lot of great things that prepared you to Eretz Yisrael. That means your level is a high level. So Yerasha has to say the word Gdula, which is something that you gained that makes you better and makes you a gay Kodesh. The Gdula is midi yeshiva b'Har Gufa. Now, the second question he asks, why Rasha says, Al Yeshivaschem, in Sifri it says, the schar is being by Har Sinai. Rashi says for being Bar Sinai. So he says, since the Gedula, the greatness, is not the Yeshiva Bahar Gufet, not the greatness is that you stayed by the mountain. Nor dos was is gekumen al teitzof as a Yeshiva Bahar. The fact there is a result that you stay by the mountain, and because of that, you reach the higher level. It doesn't say you got a reward by being there is the reward. No, you got reward for being there. That because you were there, you got a certain greatness and reward. And that's all part of what you got, that you're able to continue now in Eretz Yisrael in the proper way. The Rebbe says you could add the two expressions in Rashi, Gdula and Schar, greatness and rewards. They're connected to the two things. Since we said the whole thing is based on being prepared to enter Eretz Yisrael, so the pasuk we see further in the psukim, two things when it comes to entering Eretz Yisrael. Number one, that Eretz Yisrael. Just the fact that you're getting Eretz Yisrael. If them fordert sich, as Eden soll haben Gedula, sie darf man sein am Amlechas geben Keikad. It's just to go into Eretz Yisrael, as we said before, a settled land, a physical land, where you might forget your Gedusha. So you have to have this greatness. So he says, this is a greatness that you got, that now you're able to be a Gei Kodesh even when you're entering. So it's the enterings. And the second thing is the Eifnek Nisa. The Pasuk says, how are you going to go in? Beyu Yeshua Hashem said, go and inherit and chase them out. And Rashi says what the Eibishter was saying, Moshe was saying that the Eibishter said, you're going to go in, no one's going to argue. No one's going to challenge you. They wouldn't even have needed ammunition. That's a reward you get. To go into Eretz Yisrael, you have to go in on a certain level. So that's Gedula. Gedula, we said before, describes the level of the Eden. But the Pasuk also continues further and says you would have gone in with a special way that you wouldn't even need to fight. That would have been a reward. That's a reward. Because you prepared yourself so good by Sinai, that's a reward for that. You will be going to Israel. So the two words, Gdula v'Schar, is connected the two pratim that the Torah says. And so too the Rebbe says, when they appointed Sanhedrin, you also had two things. Tzivui uminui. You had the commandment of the Eibishter, and you had the appointing. So number one is durch the Meibishter mitziv chalakim, that the Eibishter will command him. When Yisrael told him that, he said, go ask permission from Hashem, and Hashem did command him to do it. And the second thing is the Vayivchar Moshe. Moshe chose the people. Hovolach and Moshe says, you will put that upon them, which means Moshe Rabbeinu did it. So you have two ways to look at it. You could look at it as far as there is Eibishter said to do it, and you could look at it that Moshe Rabbeinu did it. So in Sifri, when man bringt Arosin Aschar gegeben for the Meibishten in Sifri, where it's only talking about the reward that you got, is there Madgish Manisi Aleichem. He stresses, just says that I made on you. The Eibishter appointed the Sanhedrin. So the Eibishter, that's a schar. The Eibishter gave you something. At Asher vel Chezuis in the Gdula from the Eden, but in Rasha, where Rasha means stressing that the Eden, the level that the Eden reached, being ready to go to Yisrael. So Rasha says, Manisi Aleichem, something that you did. You reach such a high level that you were able to appoint it. Now, the truth is they're both true, but which one do you stress? So in Sifri, stresses one thing, the schar they got, they did something special for them, gave him Sanhedrin, and Rasha was trying to say how you reached a higher level, that you're now Beruchni is prepared to go into Eretz Yisrael. So Rasha says, the word he said, Menisim Lechem, you did something, you reached such a high level that you were able to appoint Sanhedrin upon you. And that answers the difference in this Shinui also. In the secrets of Torah, the wine of Torah, when Jeruchni is the chassidus of Torah, that you could say that in Rasha. Rasha's might the posik not divert Rav Lochem Sheves on divert Marazeh. Rasha quotes from the posik the words Rav Lochem Sheves. He doesn't quote the word Baharazeh Taich Kipshute, and he said, what does it mean? It's enough to stay here. It's as if Rasha is saying it's not negayed to this har, not this har. It's enough to stay. In the Medrash, I got to bring the Divert Harazeh. When he says the second pshat, the Medrash, then he says the words also Harazeh. Why does Rasha not mention according to the first pshat, the words Baharazeh? He just says Rav Lachem Sheves. The Pasuk is trying to say it, and Rasha says Kipshute. Kipshute means Poshet. Rav Lachem Sheves, it's enough to stay. As if Rasha is saying, this is not a simple pshat in Rasha, but deeper in Rasha, Rasha is saying that the Pasuk is it's enough Sheves, enough staying. Nothing to do with the mountain. It's enough staying. You could say by them he hints to a general lesson in Avodas Hashem. Jeder wissen, jeder has to know as a matzah for Sheves, the situation of staying put, bleiben, sitzen auf einer, to stay in one place, staying in derselbe Darge, wie das ist, Baruch, und nicht gehen weiter und nachher, staying in the same level of serving Hashem and not going further and higher is Rav Lechem. That's more than enough. It's too much. You can't stay on the same place. If you stay in the same place, it's too much. You can't do that. Wie gut and heich soll sein der Gosse as good and as high a person's level in Avodas Hashem should be. So, but a hemshech zman from bleiben sitzen derselbe Darge for a long time, for him to stay sitting in the same level is abgegeben of them zu viel Zeit. That means you're spending too much time there. Ayida seiner mahalach. Ayida always has to travel, has to go higher. Keseder streben zu gehen als hecher. You also have to have a want to always go higher. So the Rashi is telling us like a lesson. And if you learn the Rashi, the Rav Lochem Sheves, the Rashi Kipshute. Porsche Pshad, you can't sit great. In Harsina was great. You have to go higher. You always have to go higher. No higher always from the Pirish. Rashi, another lesson you could take from Rashi. I said many times, if you have more than one pshat on the same posik, they must have a connection. Bifrat needn't it done, especially in our case, the zwei Perushim was Rashi bring Dobi Perushay, these two pshatim that Rashi brings here have a connection. And so you have the first pshat that means Pasha, you're staying too much here. The second pshat is that you gain so much greatness in Bahar Sinai, they have a connection. And this brings us to a lesson. The two things concerning entering Eretz Yisrael. Number one, the Pirush Kepshuta Azidin darfen gehen, was schneller kevis an Eretz Yisrael bepasht. Like we said before, Pshat in Rashi, the simple Pshat is that you have to leave, you have to go as fast as possible to conquer Eretz Yisrael. Push it, to conquer Eretz Yisrael. And the Pirush as the Smein the Achone Ruch Nisulak Nisilor. And the second Pshat also concerning being ready to go to Eretz Yisrael, but not push it that you have to go begashmis. Go ahead and conquer the land. But the ruchnizik preparation you have to make. Asisa Mishkan, you made the Mishkan, and Kibaltem Torah, you received the Torah, so these two things, entering Eretz Yisrael, Poshet, he said, go and enter Eretz Yisrael, and have the ruchnizik preparations, and the Torah says that the two go together, one depends on the other. Dafke the Farvas Mizagei Kodesh, only because you're a holy nation, which is, as we said before, that was the reason why they were, in the way that they were ready to go to Eretz Yisrael. You have a lot of greatness in Ruchnius, Vakumpin Eretz Yisrael. That's how you get Eretz Yisrael. The Gashmis that you're getting Eretz Yisrael depends on the Ruchnisdike preparation and the Ruchnisdike level. And he says in order 53, Beloshna Reb Sadigon says, our nation is a nation, and a nation means when you have a place to your own country, it's only because of the Torah. Opposite of other nations. Was werden Erfolgen verbunden mit bekommen ein Land, wo sie leben. They become a nation that is connected to having a land where they live. Bei Yidden is der Inyan von Rav Lachem Sheves Kipshute, that by Yidden, the fact that you're staying here too long, in simple pshat, which means that Lamayer Libayaschem Lores, that the Eibishter wants you to leave right away to go faster into Eretz Yisrael, is nicht nur am Hiris Bisman, it's not only fast in time, it's to be faster in how you're going to go in. Which is the second pshat, how fast can you go in? If you have a lot, you go faster in your ruchnistic preparation. And you reach a level through that as we said before, that the way it was supposed to be, that no one's going to challenge it. You didn't have to have a war, without ammunition. So if you have the ruchnistic preparation, that's how you will have the physical preparation. And in which way? In the special way that you won't even have to fight. In other words, it means like this. The Shaykhs for Eretz Yisrael to Eden is a ganz anders wie bei anderen Völkern. The connection of Eden to Eretz Yisrael is completely different than other nations. By the Salem, by all the nations, the land that they live in has no special, this is a special connection to them. That's why they have to fight for it. It's not an essential connection. It's not be'etzem theirs. They got it. How do you get it? You have to fight for it. So they have to fight for it. Schenke bei Jeden ist verbunden mit Eretz Yisrael und Anhefen bei Jeden, the connection there is in such a way, und bei Sitten sein in der Masse von Gay Kodesh Begolis is Nike Begol, and the Jeden are physically, openly a holy nation, then you see this connection in an open way. At this land, the land belongs essentially to Eden. Essentially, it's theirs. But the Medrash Tanchuma says, Bocha Beretz Yisrael, they chose Eretz Yisrael, so it's a chosen place. And he chose for his share Eden, he chose Eretz Yisrael, he chose the Eden. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem said, Yovei Yisrael Shabo L'Chelkei, V'yinchol Esoret Shabo L'Chelkei. That let the Eden who came to the Chelik of Hashem, and they should inherit, and it's the land that is to the Chelik of Hashem. So it's an essential connection because of Hashem. That's Eden and Eretz Yisrael go together. So by Eden, it depends on their etzem. And if you are a Gekodesh Begilu, he says, if you're actually behaving properly, then you see it in a Begiludik way. And the Pasuk says that Abishai made a covenant giving Eretz Yisrael. And the covenant means something that you could never change, could never be destroyed. The mail is so then really you shouldn't even have to fight. No one could challenge the Eretz Yisrael. And that's the should help. It should be that way soon. As will be merit to get complete Eretz Yisrael in a way that no one will challenge you and you won't need war. The may be a mamish. And that's the connection between the two pirushim. The first pirush is going to Eretz Yisrael Kipshuta, and the second pirush is being ready to go in, and it all makes that you don't even have to fight. That's the connection, that you have to go in Eretz Yisrael Kipshuta, but how do you get it? If you behave in a way that you're ready for Eretz Yisrael Beruchnius and staying a Gei Kodesh.